Since 1983, FAME has helped business and education work for Maine. Contact the Authority, the Finance Authority of Maine.
Welcome. This is our Afterthoughts segment where we keep our guests around from our broadcast program for a little extra discussion and a little more candid discussion on some of the topics we didn't get to. And with us today, we're talking about venture capital and business capital that's available in the state of Maine and where it's going to go. And with us today, we have Michael Gurau, founder of Clear Venture Partners, Robert Phelps, CEO of Bar Harbor Biotechnology, and Beth Bordowitz, CEO of the Finance Authority of Maine. All right. Where we left off, we talked about a lot of the issues, but really want to kind of jump into what this new year is going to bring. Now that we have a new kind of political climate in Maine, obviously we have a new governor, we have a new legislature too, really. I mean, in the sense that the Republicans have really taken both houses of the legislature, and we have a Republican governor now. There certainly was a lot of talk on the campaign trail about businesses and growing businesses. What are your general thoughts about that? What's going to happen? And can that have an impact on availability of funding and capital for businesses?
I'll throw it that it strikes me that there are two thrusts of the current administration, the new administration. One is low taxes, and one is a small regulatory environment. And I think both would be good for business climate in general. I guess the negative I can see is that I don't anticipate any progressive capital access programs in terms of things that would cost the taxpayer money. Venture capital is the highest risk asset you can invest in, or among the highest risk assets, and I can't see a new administration thinking that it's prudent to do that. So I think that we've already got a $20 million pool allocated, and that's great, and whether that stays and is preserved, we'll see, but I don't anticipate any. My hope is that MTI gets refunded, continues to see funding.
Well, that's the other question, and also are funds for research and development too. I mean, is that, I don't know. Beth, what do you see? What do you hear?
Well, I have no knowledge that anyone around this table doesn't have. There's absolutely a strong undercurrent in Augusta that wants to be very business friendly. Clearly, the governor-elect is very interested in being business friendly. There's still a lot of institutional knowledge at the legislature. They know what tools have been effective. There are a lot of people who have been in that same legislature that have funded MTI significantly over the past few years. They're familiar with the tools that we have, such as the seed capital tax credit, that are effective and where you can make some small changes perhaps and do a lot of good or target a particular sector. So I think it'll be interesting to see the economic development plan that comes out of the new administration and see where the focus is going to be. Because I think we're going to need some focus, because you're not going to be able to do everything.
Right. Do you think there can be expansion of the seed capital tax credit?
I don't know if there'll be expansion. Certainly the last 3 years there's been talk of expansion.
Right.
What I hope to see personally is that there is targeted policy approach to the seed capital tax credit program, so that when we know the economic development plan, the seed capital tax program can be really helpful in implementing any economic development plan that's put forward.
What do you think?
Stability. You know, having a new governor in and knowing a basic game plan is going to be laid down and set forth for the next few years gives me as a CEO a little bit better stability for me to make decisions. Who am I going to hire? How big am I going to make a division? Where am I going to divisionalize?
Right.
All of that really has a big impact on the governor, and the fact that his background's in business, he speaks our language. That's definitely a big benefit to us.
What are the also as a CEO, you're a benchmark guy too, and you set them for your company.
Absolutely.
So what benchmarks would you set for this administration, and not just LePage, but also the legislature? I mean, the things that Beth was just talking about. They have to come in. They want to be business friendly. They want to reduce regulations. They want to keep taxes under control.
Sure.
So what do they got to do to make, at the end of this year, guys like you say, okay, it was worth, I supported that, and I'm glad they're there.
Yeah, you know, go with what works. If I had to give any advice to the legislation coming in, MTI, I can't speak highly enough about their staff, their philosophy, what they've done for our company. Small Enterprise Growth Fund.
So you would support investing more in MTI?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
So, but cutting something else to make up for that, right?
Or, you know, looking for other alternatives for tax bases, tax revenues. There's a lot of institutions that you could take a look at their status and see if, I know, it's something.
You said that. What about, I guess, just, is there anything other, I mean, Maine is also one of the lowest states in terms of private sector research and development investment. And what else, is there anything we can be doing about that, and where do we go? Is there any?
Well, to me, it's all about the university. I
Okay.
mean, that's where the private is so much of its spin-off, and there's such a wonderful mix between the Jackson Labs, Maine, University of Maine, and some of the spin-offs that come from there. But having the innovation at the university and then allowing for those spin-offs, it's really where it's helped. That's why you see so much venture capital in Boston, because of all of the wonderful spin-offs that are coming out of all the wonderful higher education institutions there. I think Maine has been pretty successful in starting up some of those innovative sectors at the university, having the tie-ins and then trying to commercialize them. And I think that's going to be very, very important.
Innovation ecosystem requires the bridge that Beth said is still missing, which is you get the university to spin out, you get MTI to fund that first step,
Right.
and then SCGB maybe can fund a small piece of it. And
They're not really going to carry it.
no, and the balance is going to be really a question mark. I see a real death of entrepreneurship in that innovation space. You can fund all the university you want, you can fund MTI, and you'll still see a very low hit rate of companies that actually form and stay in Maine. And you won't. I think we're going to see a decline in the growth of the innovation economy, which was catalyzed by this past governor and by the Charting Maine's Future investment in innovation across the full spectrum. I'm just really pleased we have the SCGB that we have in the MTI, but I don't feel like, unfortunately, it's enough, or that we have the budget in the next couple of years to do anything about it. Do
investors, is by being in Maine a negative in and of itself? Do investors from out there in the real world, if they hear that business is in Maine, do they say, oh?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a negative. I mean, it's
because of what though?
Well, the earliest.
I got a good idea. I've got it ready to go. I want to do it up here. Right. Why is it a negative?
Well, on one hand, you have the dynamic of can you find enough good people, and I think Robert's managed to build the team he's got. The question will be, can he stay here and continue to find talent that wants to move to Maine? Because the risk is not that they can't find good living with Robert, but that when if something doesn't work out with Robert, and then they say, well, I haven't got a place to go, I've moved my family up here. It's a real challenge.
It's not a fat labor market.
Right. And you got, in the Boston market, the VCs like to be close to their businesses as they're forming. They want to be within an hour's drive or theoretically an hour's, I mean, they tend to fly a lot, but as a general rule, they want you to be in close to the ecosystem. When you want to find that second and third round of capital, you're going to find them saying, I'll be happy to fund the technology, but you got to move it here.
Just a little bit. I think it depends what kind of business it is. I think it really does. So there might be some types of businesses, and then I've run across them where the venture capitalists are saying you have to be here and not in Maine because of other infrastructure, the cluster concept sort of thing. But there are other businesses which do just fine, and actually being in Maine is a positive that can be sold. And so I do think it matters what type of business it is.
Well, and put it back to you then, Robert. I mean, you do, and I really is. But you have somewhere, I like how you do that, somewhere between $2 and $5 million in venture capital.
Yes.
So it could be 2 or 5. Not going to nail you down that. But you also, the idea is you want to grow from you have 7 employees, you want to grow to 50, I think is what you're saying. Yeah. Can you find those 50? Can you get the 50 you need right where you are?
I think Michael identified it. It's definitely a fallback position. It's more of a challenge. But I think as a business owner, as a CEO of a company here in Maine, you're going to have your challenges anywhere you go. And it's just different sets of challenges. So where we may have a lack of, say, human genetics, which, again, I'd love to back Beth in regards to funding the university, expand programs, start looking at things maybe beyond the mouse genetics in the area, but start to build that infrastructure of fallback positions for the smaller companies that once you do get established, you can start to lure talent to Maine. Just the natural resources around here alone is more than enough of a lure. To be honest with you, we can bring in a certain level of individuals that look at it as a challenge. You're joining a small startup. We're not talking about non-entrepreneur type individuals. Just the fact that they'd want to join a small startup aren't really challenge adverse. It's just more of building a better infrastructure, maybe more diversity in regards to fallback positions for individuals.
And Beth's point about Maine's asset with respect to clusters, the wind energy thing is really centered in Bangor.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, the biotechnology area is one that the Maine cluster report highlighted has to be affiliated with Massachusetts. It's not enough to think we can build. So to the extent that Robert can liaise with Massachusetts, tap that, create a second operation there, and keep the first Maine-based operation vibrant, you can get around that. And in the web-based world, you can be very virtual. So you can have a team all across the country. So to Beth's point, you can find a way to work it through the business model, through the sector alliances, and in some cases, given the wind energy stuff we've got going on and the composite stuff, we actually have a shot at having our own cluster, which would make this a strong place to be.
All right, I'm going to wrap it right there. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you all.